The gunshot that killed her husband echoed through the canyon for what felt like an eternity. But Amelia Owens knew she had exactly 3 seconds before the bandits turned their attention to her. She grabbed the reins of the spooked horses and drove the wagon forward with every ounce of strength in her body, leaving behind the crumpled form of Thomas on the dusty Nevada trail, his blood seeping into the parched earth of 1878. The wagon careened down the rocky path toward Virginia City, wheels threatening to splinter with every jarring bounce. Behind her, the thunder of hooves grew louder. The bandits wanted what little money Thomas had been carrying, the deed to their small ranch, everything they had worked 5 years to build. Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs as she urged the horses faster, faster, knowing that if they caught her, death would be a mercy compared to what men like that did to women alone on the frontier. The outskirts of Virginia City appeared like a mirage through the dust. Buildings materialized. People on the streets turned to stare at the wild-eyed woman driving her wagon like the devil himself was on her heels. She pulled hard on the reins outside the sheriff's office, nearly colliding with a hitching post. Her legs barely held her weight as she stumbled down from the seat. "They killed him," she gasped to the first person who reached her, a tall man in dusty leather chaps and a worn hat. "My husband, they killed Thomas, on the road from Silver Springs." The man steadied her with strong hands on her shoulders. His face was weathered from years under the Nevada sun, probably in his late 20s, with eyes the color of storm clouds. "Easy now, madam. How many were there?" "4, maybe 5. They wanted our money, our papers." Her voice cracked. "I just ran." "You did right." He guided her toward the sheriff's office door. "Let's get you inside." The sheriff, a portly man named Walsh, took her statement with infuriating slowness, writing down every detail while Amelia's hands trembled in her lap. The tall cowboy who had helped her inside stood by the door, hat in his hands, listening intently. When she finished, Sheriff Walsh set down his pen and sighed. "Mrs. Owens, I'm sorry for your loss, but the truth is we have got our hands full with the mining disputes. Those raiders you are describing sound like the Garrett Gang. They have been hitting travelers between here and Silver Springs for months. We sent 2 posses after them already." "So you will not go after them?" Amelia's voice rose. "They murdered my husband." "I will send word to the territorial marshal, but it will take time. In the meantime, you should find somewhere safe to stay. You have family in Virginia City." The question hit her like a physical blow. "No, we were heading here to start fresh. Thomas had a job waiting at the Consolidated mine." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "We spent everything we had on the ranch in Silver Springs, but it failed. The well ran dry. We were coming here to begin again." Sheriff Walsh's expression softened but offered no solutions. "There is a boarding house on C Street. Mrs. Whitmore runs it. Tell her I sent you. I have no money for a boarding house." Amelia stood, her black dress dusty and torn at the hem. Everything was in Thomas's pockets. They took it all. The sheriff exchanged glances with the tall cowboy, then cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, the church sometimes helps folks in your situation." Amelia walked out of the office, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed in front of strangers. The street was chaos, miners and merchants, and painted ladies and gamblers all mixing in the afternoon sun. Virginia City was booming with the silver strikes, money flowing like water, yet she stood there with nothing. Not a cent, not even enough to bury her husband properly. "Madam, hold on." The cowboy had followed her out. Up close, she could see the kindness in his face beneath the rough exterior. "Name is Franklin Porter. I've got a spread about 5 miles north of town. Nothing fancy, but I run cattle and do some horse trading. I could not help but hear your situation in there." Amelia straightened her spine. "I do not need charity, Mr. Porter. Was not offering charity." He settled his hat back on his head, sandy hair curling slightly at his collar. "Was going to say I could use help. My housekeeper quit last month to get married, and the place is falling apart without someone to manage things. I can offer room and board and a small wage. Enough to get you back on your feet." It was charity, prettily disguised. Amelia's pride reared up, but then reality crashed down on her. She had no money, no food, no shelter, and night was coming. In a mining town full of desperate men and loose morals, a woman alone would not last long before someone decided to take advantage. "I cannot pay you," she heard herself say, her voice strange and distant. "Not now, not for a while. I have nothing to give you for your kindness." She swallowed hard, her next words tasting like ash. "I have only one thing left to offer, and if that is what you want in exchange for helping me, then I suppose I have no choice." She could not look at him as she said it, humiliation burning through her like fire. But what choice did she have? She was alone, penniless, widowed not even 3 hours. This was what the world did to women without protection or means. Franklin Porter went very still. When Amelia finally forced herself to meet his eyes, she saw something unexpected there. Not lust or calculation, but a deep, quiet anger on her behalf. "Mrs. Owens," he said slowly, clearly, "I am going to pretend you did not say that. You have had the worst day of your life and you are not thinking straight. I am offering you honest work for honest pay, nothing more. You will have your own room with a lock on the door. You will cook and clean and manage the household, and I will pay you $20 a month plus room and board. You keep your dignity and you take my help. That is the arrangement, nothing else." Amelia stared at him, tears finally spilling over. In 5 years of marriage to Thomas, she had learned that most men thought of women as property or pleasure, rarely as people. This cowboy, this stranger, was offering her something she had not expected: respect. "Why?" she whispered. "Because somebody helped my mother once when my father died and left her with 3 boys to raise. Because it is the right thing to do. Because you have been through hell today, and you deserve better than what you are expecting from the world." He gestured to her wagon. "You have belongings in there, a few things. Clothes, some kitchen items. Not much. Then let us get you out to the ranch. You look about ready to fall over and you need food and rest. We can come back tomorrow to sort out what needs sorting." Amelia climbed back onto the wagon seat, her body moving automatically. Franklin untied his horse, a rangy bay gelding, and swung into the saddle. He led her north out of Virginia City, through the sagebrush and scrub pine that dotted the Nevada landscape. The sun was lowering toward the western mountains, painting everything gold and crimson. The ranch appeared as they crested a small rise. It was modest, a sturdy house built of logs and rough-cut lumber, a large barn, several corrals with horses milling about. Everything was neat, but had that unmistakable air of a place missing a woman's touch. The porch needed sweeping, the windows could use washing, and she could see laundry hanging haphazardly on a line. "Not much, but it is home," Franklin said, dismounting. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands polite and brief. "Come on inside. I will get a fire going and make some coffee." The interior was what she expected from a bachelor household, functional but sparse. A large main room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace and simple furniture. Everything was clean enough but disorganized, with papers stacked on the table and dishes from several meals piled by the wash basin. "Your room is through there." Franklin pointed to a door off the main room. "Used to be my mother's before she passed 2 years back. It has a good bed and a window that catches the morning light. I am upstairs in the loft." Amelia walked to the room and pushed open the door. It was small but comfortable, with a quilt-covered bed, a dresser, and a rocking chair by the window. The sight of it, a safe place to sleep, broke something inside her. She sank down onto the bed and finally let herself cry. She wept for Thomas, who had been a good man even if not a particularly successful one. She wept for the future they had planned that would never happen. She wept for her own terror and exhaustion, and the horrible offer she had made to Franklin Porter, born of desperation and despair. And she wept because a stranger had been kinder to her in an hour than the world had been in months. Eventually, the tears stopped. Amelia washed her face in the basin someone had left on the dresser, tidied her hair as best she could, and returned to the main room. Franklin was at the stove, actually cooking something that smelled surprisingly good. "Nothing fancy," he said without turning around. "Just beans and bacon and cornbread. But it is hot and filling. Thank you." She stood awkwardly, unsure what to do. "I should help." "You should sit down before you fall down. Food will be ready in a minute." Amelia sat at the rough-hewn table and watched him move about the kitchen. He was competent, if not elegant, in his cooking. When he set a plate before her, she realized she had not eaten since breakfast, a lifetime ago when Thomas was still alive. They ate in silence for a while. Finally, Franklin spoke. "I need to be straight with you about something. The work here is real. I was not making it up to spare your feelings. My mother ran this household like a military operation, and since she died, I have been living like a wild animal. I can cook enough not to starve, but that is about it. The house needs a woman's organization. If you are willing to take on the work, you will earn every cent I pay you." "I can work," Amelia said quietly. "I am not afraid of hard work. Thomas and I ran that ranch by ourselves. I know animals, I know cooking and preserving and mending. I can manage a household." "Good." He pushed back from the table. "Then here is what I propose. You take tomorrow to rest and get your bearings. Day after that, you start work. I will go into town in the morning and speak to the undertaker about your husband. There is a cemetery on the hill above Virginia City. I will make sure he gets buried proper. I cannot afford. I will take it out of your wages a little at a time, but it needs doing, and it needs doing right." Amelia's throat tightened again. "You are a good man, Mr. Porter. Just Franklin. We are going to be living under the same roof. Might as well dispense with formalities." He stood and carried the dishes to the basin. "You should get some rest. I will be up early to tend the horses." That first night, Amelia lay awake in the strange bed, listening to the Nevada wind whistle around the eaves. Somewhere upstairs, Franklin moved quietly, his footsteps careful as if trying not to disturb her. She thought about Thomas, about their 5 years together. He had been steady and kind, if not particularly romantic. Their marriage had been built on practical foundations. Two people alone who decided being alone together was better than being alone apart, but there had been affection between them, and respect. Thomas had never raised a hand to her, never spoken cruelly. In the frontier, that made him a better husband than many. Now he was gone, killed for a handful of coins and a piece of paper. She must have slept eventually, because she woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of someone working outside. Amelia rose, dressed in the same black dress she had worn yesterday, it being the only morning clothes she had, and ventured out to the main room. Franklin had already been up for hours, clearly. The fire was going, coffee was made, and breakfast was waiting under a cloth. There was a note on the table in rough handwriting. "Gone to town. Back by afternoon. Eat. Rest. You are safe here." Amelia sat alone in the quiet house and cried again, but this time from something other than grief. This time, from gratitude that in the worst moment of her life, she had stumbled into the path of a man who saw her as a human being worthy of dignity. She spent the day exploring the house, taking inventory of what was there and what was needed. Franklin had not been exaggerating about needing help. The place was a disaster by any homemaker's standards. But underneath the chaos, she could see the bones of a good home. His mother had clearly been an excellent housekeeper, and her systems were still evident if you knew where to look. Franklin returned in late afternoon, riding up to the house with a package tied to his saddle. He dismounted and came inside, pulling off his hat. "Got you something," he said, handing her the parcel. "Figured you might need it." Inside was fabric, black fabric. Enough for 2 dresses and thread to match. "You are in mourning," Franklin said simply. "You should have proper clothes for it. There is a sewing machine in the corner over there. My mother used it all the time. This must have cost, like I said. I will take it out of your wages. But you need it now, not 6 months from now when you have saved enough." Amelia held the fabric against her chest. "Did they find him?" "Did you see the undertaker?" Franklin's face grew somber. "They brought him in about an hour after I got to town. Some miners found him on the trail. The undertaker, Mr. Sims, is a good man. He will prepare Thomas properly. The burial is set for day after tomorrow, up at the cemetery. I let it be known you are working for me and under my protection. The word will spread. You should not have any trouble from the rougher element in town." "Under your protection," Amelia repeated softly. "That is a serious thing to say in a place like Virginia City." "I am a serious man." Franklin met her eyes steadily. "You are in my employ and living under my roof. That makes you my responsibility. Anyone who bothers you answers to me. That is how it works." The funeral was a small affair. Amelia stood by the fresh grave in her hastily sewn black dress, Franklin a respectful distance behind her. The preacher said the usual words about dust and resurrection. A few townspeople came, more out of curiosity than sympathy, wanting to see the woman whose husband had been killed by bandits. When it was over, Franklin drove her back to the ranch in his buckboard. They did not speak much. What was there to say? A man was dead, a woman was widowed, and life went on with brutal indifference. The next morning, Amelia began her work in earnest. She started with the kitchen, scrubbing and organizing until everything had its place. Then she moved to the main room, washing windows and sweeping floors and beating the dust out of every rug and cushion. Franklin stayed out of her way, working with the horses and cattle, coming in only for meals. The routine established itself quickly. Amelia rose at dawn to make breakfast. Franklin came in from the morning chores. They ate together in companionable silence. Then he went back outside while she tackled the household tasks. She made lunch, served it, then spent afternoons on mending or preserving or the endless other tasks that kept a ranch running. Dinner was at sunset, and afterward they sometimes sat on the porch, watching the light fade over the mountains. They talked during those evening hours. Small things at first. Franklin told her about the ranch, how he had built it up over 8 years, starting with nothing but a land claim and a good horse. He talked about his brothers, both married and moved to California. He talked about his mother, who had been tough as nails and twice as sharp. Amelia talked less, but gradually she opened up. She told him about growing up in Ohio, coming west with her first wagon train at 19, meeting Thomas at a trading post in Utah. She talked about their struggles to make the ranch work, the drought that killed their crops, the well that ran dry and finally broke them. "We were going to start fresh here," she said one evening, staring out at the darkening sky. "Thomas was so hopeful about the mining job. He said this was our second chance." "You still have a second chance," Franklin said quietly. It just looks different than you planned." The weeks passed. Summer heat settled over Nevada like a blanket. Amelia's black dresses grew worn from constant wear and washing. The household transformed under her capable hands. The house shone, meals were regular and good, mending was done promptly. Franklin's shirts no longer had missing buttons, his socks no longer had holes. More than that, the house felt like a home again. There were flowers in a jar on the table, curtains in the windows, the smell of bread baking. Franklin found himself hurrying through his outside work, eager to get back to the house. Not just for the good meals, though those were a revelation after 2 years of his own poor cooking, but for the company, for the sound of another human being moving through the rooms, for the sight of Amelia sitting by the window with her mending, late afternoon light turning her brown hair to gold. He was falling for her. Franklin recognized it and tried to fight it. She was his employee, dependent on him, vulnerable. She was in mourning, her husband barely 3 months in the ground. Any advance he made would be the action of a scoundrel taking advantage of a woman with no other options. So he kept his distance, was scrupulously polite, never touched her except by accident. And those accidents, brief brushes of hands when passing plates at dinner, stopped his breath every time. Amelia knew he was attracted to her. She was not blind. She saw how his eyes followed her sometimes, saw how carefully he maintained propriety between them. Part of her was grateful for his restraint, but another part, a part that surprised her with its strength, wished he would close the distance between them, because she was falling for him too. How could she not? Franklin Porter was everything Thomas had been and more, strong, capable, kind beyond measure. But where Thomas had been solid and unexciting, Franklin had depths. He read books, real books, not just newspapers. He had opinions on politics and mining and the future of Nevada. He had a laugh that started deep in his chest and made her smile every time she heard it, and he was handsome. Amelia had noticed that first day, even through her grief and terror. But living with him, seeing him every day in all his moods and moments, she found him increasingly attractive. The way he moved, economical and sure. The way he spoke, measured and thoughtful. The way he treated her with such careful respect as if she were something precious. 4 months after her arrival in October, when the heat finally broke, Amelia made a decision. She was sitting on the porch at sunset, shelling peas for dinner when Franklin came up from the barn. "Good day," she asked, as she always did. "Good enough. Got the fence mended in the south pasture, should hold through winter." He sat down on the porch step, which had become his usual spot. "How about you? I preserved the last of the tomatoes. The pantry is well stocked for winter now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Amelia set down the bowl of peas and said, "Franklin, I need to talk to you about something." He turned to look at her, concern immediate in his eyes. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. At least, I hope not." She took a breath. "I have been here 4 months now. You have been nothing but good to me. You have given me work and a home and safety. You have never once overstepped or made me uncomfortable. You have treated me with more respect than I knew a man could show a woman." "You have earned it," Franklin said quietly. "You work harder than any hand I have ever hired." "That is not what I am trying to say." Amelia twisted her hands together. "What I am trying to say is that my mourning period is traditionally a year. But Thomas, he was a good man and I cared for him. But ours was not a grand passion. It was a partnership, a practical arrangement that worked well enough. I have mourned him honestly. I will always be sad that he died the way he did, but I am not going to pretend to feelings I do not have." Franklin went very still. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I am alive. I am 26 years old and I am alive, and I am living in a house with a man who is everything I could want. And I see the way you look at me sometimes, Franklin. I see it, and I want you to know that I look at you the same way. Amelia. Her name was rough in his throat. You are working for me. You depend on me. I will not take advantage of that. I will not be that kind of man. You are not taking advantage. I am telling you what I want. She stood up, walked over to where he sat on the step. I am telling you that I have feelings for you, real feelings, the kind I never had for Thomas, though he was a good husband. I am telling you that if you have feelings for me too, I want to know. Not in a year, not in 6 months. Now. Franklin looked up at her, this woman who had come into his life broken and desperate, and who had somehow mended his life while putting her own back together. I have feelings for you, he said hoarsely. God help me, I have been trying not to. You have been through so much. I did not want to pressure you or make things complicated. Life is already complicated. Love makes it simpler. Amelia held out her hand. What do you say, Franklin Porter? Do you want to court me? Properly, with all the respect and propriety that entails. Because I want to be courted by you. I want to sit on this porch with you and know that we are building towards something. I want to hope again. He took her hand, stood up so they were face to face. Amelia Owens, I would be honored to court you, properly and respectfully and with all the time you need. I do not need much time, she said softly. I already know you. I have been living with you for 4 months. I know you are a good man, the best man I have ever known. I know how you take your coffee and what makes you laugh, and how you treat animals with such gentleness. I know you snore slightly when you sleep, and you sing off-key when you think no one is listening. I know you better than I knew Thomas after 5 years of marriage. Franklin laughed, that deep chest laugh she loved. I do not snore, you do, just a little. They stood there on the porch, hands clasped, grinning at each other like fools. Then Franklin grew serious. I want to do this right. I want to marry you, Amelia, not today, not even next month. But I want people to see that we are courting properly, that I am not some scoundrel who seduced his housekeeper. Your reputation matters. Your dignity matters. Then we will do it right, Amelia agreed. You will court me. We will go to church socials and town gatherings. You will be charming and proper, and I will be demure and ladylike, and everyone will see that we are falling in love the way respectable people do. Even though we already fell, Franklin said. Even though we already fell. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so sweet and old-fashioned that Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me a chance, for seeing me as something worth wanting. Thank you for seeing me the same way. For seeing me as a person worth saving, not something to be used. The courtship was everything a courtship should be. Franklin drove Amelia into Virginia City for church on Sundays, and afterward they walked through the town together, his hand proper at her elbow. He bought her small gifts, hair ribbons, a book of poetry, a pretty teacup. They attended a church social in November where they danced together for the first time, and Franklin proved to have surprising grace for such a big man. The gossips talked, of course. It had only been 5 months since Thomas died, but Franklin's reputation in Virginia City was solid, and people could see that he treated Amelia with utmost respect. And if some of the cruder men whispered about the housekeeper sharing more than cooking with her employer, they did it quietly, because Franklin Porter was not a man you wanted to cross. Winter came to Nevada, cold and harsh. Snow dusted the mountains and ice formed in the water troughs. Amelia and Franklin spent the long, dark evenings by the fireplace, reading aloud to each other or just talking. Sometimes they played cards or checkers. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, content in each other's company. It was in January, almost exactly a year after Thomas died, that Franklin asked her properly. They were on the porch, bundled in coats and blankets, watching the stars that filled the Nevada sky like scattered diamonds. "Amelia," Franklin said, his breath misting in the cold air. "I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple gold with a small blue stone. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "My mother gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to a woman worth having. You are worth having, Amelia. You are worth everything. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love?" Amelia looked at the ring, at Franklin's earnest face, at the stars above them. She thought about the day she arrived in Virginia City, broken and desperate and offering the only thing she had left. She thought about the man who had refused her offer and given her something infinitely better: dignity, respect, time to heal. And then, when she was ready, he had given her love. "Yes," she said, smiling through happy tears. "Yes, Franklin, I will marry you. I will be your wife and your partner and your love for all the days we have." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close and kissed her. Their first kiss, after months of careful courtship. It was sweet and tender and full of promise. They were married in March, as soon as the mountain passes cleared enough for Franklin's brothers and their families to make the journey from California. The wedding was at the small church in Virginia City, with half the town in attendance. Amelia wore a dress of pale blue, because she was done with mourning black, and she carried wildflowers that were just starting to bloom in the high desert. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Franklin kissed her with such joy that the congregation erupted in cheers and applause. They rode back to the ranch in the buckboard, now their ranch, their home together. That night they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion. Franklin was careful with her, making sure she felt cherished and safe. Amelia gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. This was what marriage should be, she realized. Not just partnership, but real connection. Not just affection, but genuine love. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Amelia's organizational skills combined with Franklin's knowledge of horses and cattle made them a formidable team. They expanded the herd, improved the breeding stock, and gained a reputation for selling quality animals. In the fall of 1879, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. Franklin was beside himself with excitement, building a cradle with his own hands and worrying endlessly about her health. In May of 1880, she gave birth to their first child, a boy they named Daniel Thomas Porter, the middle name honoring the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together. Daniel was followed by two more children, a daughter named Grace in 1882, and another son named Samuel in 1884. The house that had once been silent and lonely rang with the sounds of children playing, laughing, sometimes fighting. Amelia and Franklin raised them with love and discipline, teaching them to work hard and treat people with respect. As the years passed, Virginia City changed. The silver boom gradually played out. Some people moved on to other strikes, other dreams, but Franklin and Amelia stayed. This was their home, their place. They had built something here that mattered. They aged together gracefully. Franklin's hair turned gray at the temples, then silver all over. Lines appeared at the corners of Amelia's eyes and mouth, but Franklin told her they made her more beautiful, not less. They were laugh lines, he said, proof of a life well lived. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they sat on the same porch where Amelia had once told Franklin she had feelings for him. Their children were grown now. Daniel was running his own ranch near Reno. Grace had married a lawyer and lived in Carson City. Samuel, their youngest, was still at home, learning the business and preparing to take it over when his parents finally decided to slow down. "You ever think about that day?" Franklin asked, his hand finding Amelia's as naturally as breathing. The day you arrived in Virginia City. Sometimes, Amelia admitted, I think about how desperate I was, how frightened. I think about what I offered you and how you refused. I did not refuse, Franklin corrected gently. I offered you something better. I offered you yourself, your dignity, your choice. You offered me love, Amelia said. You just did not know it yet. Maybe I did, Franklin smiled. Maybe I knew the moment I saw you, this terrified, brave woman who had just lost everything but was still fighting. Maybe I knew right then that you were going to change my life. We changed each other's lives, Amelia said. We saved each other. You saved me first, Franklin insisted. This house was not a home until you came into it. I was not really living. I was just existing, going through motions. You brought life back. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the Nevada mountains in shades of gold and crimson, the same colors that had greeted Amelia that first terrible, wonderful day. Do you have any regrets? Amelia asked softly. Franklin thought about it seriously, as he always did. I regret that Thomas died the way he did. I regret that you had to suffer that loss. But I cannot regret where it brought you. I cannot regret us. Neither can I, Amelia said. Thomas was a good man, and I will always remember him with fondness. But Franklin, you are the love of my life. You are my heart. These 20 years with you have been the happiest of my existence. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles the way he had that first time on this porch 30 years ago. Some gestures never got old, never lost their meaning. 20 more, he said. At least 20 more if I have any say in it. 20 more, Amelia agreed. At least. As the sun dipped below the mountains and the first stars began to appear, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other in the hardest of circumstances and built something beautiful. A home, a family, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. In the kitchen, Samuel was making dinner, clattering pots and muttering to himself the way his mother used to when working out a problem. In the barn, the horses nickered softly as they settled for the night. In the distant corrals, cattle lowed peacefully. Everything was as it should be. Everything was exactly right. Years continued to pass with that particular mixture of swiftness and slowness that marks a good life. Franklin and Amelia eventually did slow down, letting Samuel take over more and more of the daily ranch operations. They became the elder generation, dispensing advice and stories, spoiling their grandchildren with the same enthusiasm they had once brought to raising their own children. Daniel brought his family to visit every few months, his own children wild and energetic, reminding Franklin of his younger self. Grace wrote long letters from Carson City, describing her husband's cases and her own work with the Church Ladies Society. Samuel married a girl from Virginia City, the daughter of a mining engineer, and brought her to live at the ranch. She and Amelia became close, the younger woman learning everything the elder could teach about running a frontier household. In 1899, as the new century approached, Franklin and Amelia celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. All three children came home for the occasion, bringing spouses and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The house overflowed with people and noise and love. At the party, Daniel stood and gave a toast. To my parents, he said, raising his glass. Two people who showed me what real love looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Committed, true. They taught me that love is not just about the good times. It is about standing together when everything falls apart. It is about seeing someone at their worst and choosing them anyway. It is about building something day by day, brick by brick, until you have a foundation nothing can shake. Everyone drank to that. Franklin and Amelia sat at the head of the long table, their hands clasped together the way they always were, and smiled at each other with 50 years of shared history in their eyes. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, they walked out to the porch one more time. They were both moving slower now, Franklin with a cane for his bad knee, Amelia's steps careful because of her arthritis. But they made it to their spot, the place where so many important moments had happened. 50 years, Amelia marveled. It feels like yesterday and like a lifetime ago at the same time. I know exactly what you mean. Franklin eased himself into his chair with a groan. Some days I wake up and forget I am an old man. Then I try to get out of bed and my body reminds me real quick. Amelia laughed. We are not so old, we have plenty of life left in us yet. Damn right we do. Franklin squeezed her hand. I plan to sit on this porch with you for at least another 20 years, watching the sun go down and counting my blessings. Is that so? Amelia's eyes twinkled. And what blessings would those be? You, Franklin said simply. Always you first and foremost. Then our children who turned out better than we had any right to expect. Our grandchildren who give me hope for the future. This ranch, this land, this life we built together. I am the richest man in Nevada, Amelia, and it has nothing to do with money. We are lucky, Amelia agreed. So very lucky. When I think about that day I came to Virginia City, about how close I came to disaster, about how you saved me. We saved each other, Franklin said, as he always did when she brought this up. You saved me from loneliness and emptiness. I just saved you from having nowhere to go. You did the hard work of building a new life. We did it together, Amelia said firmly. Everything worthwhile we did together. They sat there until the stars came out, talking occasionally but mostly just being together. At some point, Samuel came out to check on them, making sure they were warm enough, not overtired from the party. They assured him they were fine, that they would come in soon. But they stayed a while longer, reluctant to let the day end. This perfect day, surrounded by the family they had created, in the home they had built, living the life they had fought so hard to make. Eventually, the night air grew too cold even for their stubborn old bones. They went inside together, Franklin's arm around Amelia's shoulders, her arm around his waist. They climbed the stairs slowly, helping each other, the way they had done everything for 5 decades. In their bedroom, the room that had once been Franklin's alone and was now undeniably theirs, they prepared for bed with the comfortable routine of a couple who had shared sleeping space for 50 years. Amelia brushed out her silver hair, now mostly white. Franklin changed into his nightshirt, making jokes about how it was harder to get dressed and undressed than it used to be. They climbed into bed from their respective sides, meeting in the middle the way they always had. Franklin gathered Amelia close, her head on his shoulder, her arm across his chest. I love you, he said, as he did every night. I love you too, she replied, as she did every night. They fell asleep that way together, exactly as they had done for half a century. Franklin Porter lived to be 87 years old, dying peacefully in his sleep in 1910, with Amelia at his side. He had lived long enough to see automobiles on the streets of Virginia City, to see Nevada grow from a rough frontier territory to an established state, to see his great-grandchildren born. Amelia mourned him deeply, truly, in a way she had never been able to mourn Thomas. This was the loss of her other half, the person who had known her best and loved her longest. But she did not mourn alone. She had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren surrounding her, supporting her, making sure she knew she was loved. She lived 3 more years, staying at the ranch Samuel now ran, still offering advice and telling stories to anyone who would listen. She spoke often of Franklin, keeping his memory alive. She told the grandchildren about how they met, about the desperate widow and the cowboy who had treated her with dignity when she expected nothing but exploitation. "Your grandfather," she would say, her old eyes distant with memory, "was the finest man I ever knew. He saw me at my absolute worst, and he gave me the space to become my best. He never took advantage. He never pushed. He just offered help, real help with no strings attached. And when I was ready, when I had healed enough to open my heart again, he was there. He was always there." Amelia Owens Porter died in the spring of 1913, on a morning when the wildflowers were blooming across the Nevada hills. She was found in her rocking chair by the window, the one that caught the morning light, a smile on her face as if she had seen something wonderful in her last moments. They buried her next to Franklin in the cemetery above Virginia City, not far from where Thomas Owens rested. The headstone read, "Amelia Owens Porter, 1852–1913. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she knew what true love was." Samuel inherited the ranch and ran it well, passing it to his own son when the time came. The Porter Ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to the life Franklin and Amelia had built together. Each generation heard the story of how it all began, of the widow who arrived with nothing and the cowboy who gave her everything. In Virginia City, which eventually became more tourist attraction than living town, the story became something of a legend. The desperate widow and the honorable cowboy. Some versions exaggerated it, made it more dramatic than it was. But the heart of the story remained true. A woman at her lowest moment, offering the only thing she had left, and a man who refused to take advantage, who instead offered her dignity and respect and, eventually, love. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, because it was not just a story about two people who fell in love. It was a story about human decency, about choosing to be kind when kindness was not required, about seeing another person's humanity even when society would have let you treat them as less than human. Franklin Porter had seen Amelia Owens as a person worthy of respect when she could not see it herself. And that single act of decency had changed both their lives, had rippled out through generations, had created a family and a legacy that lasted long after they were gone. On warm summer evenings, if you stood on the porch of the old Porter Ranch and listened carefully, you might almost hear them. Two voices, worn with age but rich with love, talking quietly as the sun went down, sharing the day's events, making plans, simply enjoying each other's company. Two people who had found each other in the hardest of circumstances and had chosen, every day for 50 years, to keep choosing each other. Two people who had proven that love, real love, was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about respect and patience and showing up, day after day, to build something together. It was about keeping someone's dignity intact when they were ready to surrender it. It was about offering help with no strings attached. It was about seeing potential in someone when they could only see despair. It was about a cowboy who said, "Keep your dignity, take my help," and meant it. And it was about the woman who accepted that help, rebuilt her life, and gave that cowboy something he never expected in return: a home, a family, a love that lasted until death and beyond. That was the legacy of Franklin and Amelia Porter. Not just the ranch or the children or the material success, though those were real and substantial, but the example they set, the standard they maintained, the proof they offered that even in the hardest times, even in the roughest places, human decency and genuine love could flourish. Their story became part of the fabric of Virginia City's history, told and retold, sometimes accurately and sometimes not. But whether told as legend or as truth, it served the same purpose: reminding people that how you treat others in their darkest moments reveals who you truly are. And that sometimes, the greatest love stories begin not with passion or attraction, but with simple, profound respect for another human being's dignity and worth. The ranch still stands, though it has changed hands outside the Porter family now. The house has been renovated, modernized, but the bones are the same. The porch where Franklin and Amelia spent so many evenings still catches the sunset the same way. The mountains still rise in the distance, eternal and unchanging. And if you believe in such things, maybe their spirits are still there on quiet evenings, sitting together as they always did, watching the light fade over the Nevada landscape they loved. Still together, still choosing each other, still living out the love story that began with an offer refused and a dignity preserved. Because some love stories are too powerful to be contained by mere mortality. Some bonds are too strong to be broken by something as inconsequential as death. Franklin and Amelia had that kind of love. The kind that starts with respect and grows into something that shapes lives and changes destinies and echoes through generations. The kind of love that begins when a man looks at a woman at her absolute lowest and sees not an opportunity to exploit, but a person deserving of dignity and help and time to heal. The kind of love that answers desperation not with demands, but with decency. The kind of love that says, "Keep your dignity, take my help," and means it with every fiber of its being. That was the love of Franklin Porter and Amelia Owens. And it was a love that proved, against all odds, that even in the Wild West of 1878, in a rough mining town full of rough men, genuine goodness and true love could still flourish and grow and last forever. Their story ended as all stories must, with death and parting. But it also never ended, because the family they created carried on, the example they set inspired others, and the love they shared became something larger than just two people. It became a testament to what is possible when you choose kindness over exploitation, when you see dignity in desperation, when you offer help with no strings attached. In a world that often seems harsh and unforgiving, in times that test human decency to its limits, the story of Franklin and Amelia reminds us of what we can be at our best. Not perfect, never perfect, but good, decent, kind. Capable of seeing another person's worth, even when they cannot see it themselves. That is the true legacy of the cowboy who refused what was offered and gave something better instead. And the widow who accepted his help, rebuilt her life, and showed him that his faith in human dignity was justified and returned with interest, compounded over 50 years of devotion. Their love story proved that happy endings are not just for fairy tales. They exist in the real world too, for people brave enough to choose decency over advantage, patient enough to let love grow at its own pace, and committed enough to keep choosing each other, day after day, year after year, until death and beyond. Franklin and Amelia Porter, a cowboy and a widow. Two people who met in desperate circumstances and built something beautiful. Two people who proved that love, real love, begins with respect and flourishes when nurtured with patience, kindness, and unwavering commitment. Their story is over now, told and finished. But its message endures, as relevant today as it was in Virginia City in 1878. That how we treat people in their darkest moments defines us, that dignity preserved is never dignity wasted, and that the greatest love stories often begin with the simplest act of human decency. Keep your dignity. Take my help. 5 words that changed 2 lives and created a legacy that has lasted for generations. 5 words that remind us of who we can be, who we should be, In a world that desperately needs more Franklin Porters and more people willing to become their own version of Amelia Owens, broken, rebuilt, and ultimately triumphant. That is the end of their story. And also, somehow, the beginning of yours if you choose to carry their lesson forward into your own life, your own choices, your own moments when you must decide between exploitation and decency, between taking advantage and offering genuine help. Choose as Franklin chose. Rebuild as Amelia rebuilt. Love as they loved. And maybe, just maybe, you will create your own legacy worth remembering, your own story worth telling, your own love worth celebrating across generations. The cowboy and the widow. The offer refused and the help freely given. The dignity preserved and the love that followed. That is the story. That is the legacy. That is the enduring truth of Franklin and Amelia Porter, who proved that even in the Wild West, even in the hardest times, love rooted in respect and decency can flourish and last forever.